It's time to share secrets and insights from fellow entrepreneurs. If you're looking to grow or start a business and you're a game changer, then keep listening to Avanti Entrepreneur for great advice from your host, Dave Mammano, America's entrepreneur coach.
Hey, Avanti Tribe, Dave Mammano here. Just want to thank our sponsor, Paychex. You know, Paychex, they make it simple for businesses of all sizes to pay and manage their team. They make payroll easy with employee pay options, including direct deposit, checks, pay cards, and so much more. Founded over 4 decades ago to relieve the complexity of running a business so that the owners can focus on what matters most. Above all else, and more than any other company, Paychex makes it simple. Visit AvantiEntrepreneurGroup.com. Go to our partner link and check them out. They're offering you a free month of payroll just for giving them a shot as an Avanti Tribe member. Give them a shot, folks. They really help this podcast to be possible. Really appreciate Paychex. Now, enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast. I am Dave Mammano, your host, and we're here to help entrepreneurial achievers and business owners and leaders move forward so that they can reach their potential. I do this by interviewing the nation's best business movers and shakers. Today, I have really excited because I actually know this person now, met her in person, saw her give a great keynote, which was really inspiring. I want to welcome to the show, Andrea Waltz. Andrea, welcome to the show.
Dave, it is so good to be with you today.
So a couple weeks ago, I was down in beautiful Atlanta at this 3-day conference called Outbound that was put on by just 4 great guys, which I'm sure we're going to talk about you, but they chose you to be one of the keynotes, and you were fantastic. And I loved the twist of how you presented because it's very counterintuitive, right? You're all about the word no. And usually in sales, we don't like that word, right?
Right. It really seems like, I mean, I have done one heck of a challenge in terms of marketing, like coming out with this idea of go for no and what salespeople want, person wants to hear the word no, they want to hear yeses. But of course, that is the counterintuitive message because as the subtitle of our book says, yes is the destination, but no is how you get there.
I love it. So what made you think of this? Because, no is not everybody's favorite word. To your credit, it makes you stand out. It gives you a unique competitive advantage. You're known as like the no woman, right? And even your email is goforno.com, right? Your website, everything. So it certainly makes you stand out in the sea of sameness, which I personally, as a marketer, I love that because now you're different. But how did the word no for you begin?
Yeah, it didn't start off that way. Actually, my husband and business partner and I launched our company teaching sales, management, customer service. We specialized in the retail industry. But of everything that we taught, go for no was the thing that resonated. And it was actually kind of a small piece of a bunch of stuff that we taught. And it was the thing that people seemed to kind of glom onto. It was like that was the thing that they loved because it is so different and it really teaches a different mindset and a strategy about embracing no and actually intentionally going out of your way to hear no more often. That is the fundamental idea, knowing that the yeses are out there when you do that. And so we worked our business for about 7 years and Go for No kept coming to the forefront. At one point we were doing public workshops called the Go for No Retailer. And we said, what if the business just needs to be focused? Go for No is a solution to a problem. And the problem is people don't like hearing the word no. They have a fear of failure and rejection. It's across every business and every industry. It's for outside salespeople, entrepreneurs, actors. It doesn't matter. Everybody has to face rejection. So instead of just focusing on our retail niche, why don't we actually transition and focus on the topic? And so back in 2006-ish, we changed our business model and really became known as the Go for No people and just focused on this message. So as weird as it sounds, Dave, I mean, you are so right. Every day I wake up and I think, how do I teach people to hear no more often? That is like my waking thought. We're known as the Go for No people. And that's really the brand because, and I think it's important, sometimes your customers tell you what they want. In this case, it was true.
Yeah. So be really clear for the Avanti family here. When you say go for no, I mean, you're essentially saying that people don't, generally speaking, and the research shows is people don't have the endurance and the commitment and the discipline to accept the word no enough, right? And I think you gave at your keynote, you gave some statistics about people that the number of people that go away after they hear one no and three no's, et cetera. Can you repeat those, because it was very powerful?
Right. So 44% of people give up after hearing one no. That's it.
40, so almost half.
Almost half, yeah.
Give up one no.
Yeah, one no, they give up. 22% more give up after the second no.
Yeah.
18% more give up after the third, and then 12% more give up. It comes to 92% give up after getting 4 no's, and yet research has shown that 60% of all customers say no at least 5 times before making a decision. And so the point of those statistics is, well, then how do you finally get the yes? And the answer is you have to stay in the game long enough to where people see your messaging, see your brand, understand your value, hear the offer, maybe hear the offer in multiple times, in multiple ways, and then they finally make a decision. But it's that stick-to-itiveness and that persistence that's required, and that means hearing no a lot. And one of my favorite thoughts is that when top performers hear the word no, they think the process is just getting started. When average performers hear the word no, they think the process is over. You've got to look at it like, okay, great, I got a no. Now, the very first question I teach people to think about when they hear that no is, what's my next move? Think of it like, a football play. How do I move that ball down the field? What's my next move? And so in that moment, for sure, don't let yourself get off kilter, respond positively and say, all right, no problem. Do you mind if I check back with you in 60 days to see if anything has changed? Or if you had a long conversation and you're down to this final ask, and maybe you've consulted and you've asked all these great questions, maybe the answer is, wow, I'm surprised. What made you say no? I'm just curious. You've got to work with that no.
Right.
Takes a lot of courage.
It does. And do you think it's laziness, or do you think it's just fear?
I think it's a little bit maybe of laziness, because I think people get kind of disillusioned, and they start telling themselves like, I'm getting nothing but no's today, so just forget it. It's just a waste of time. It's a waste of effort. So there's some of that, but I think a lot of it has to do with fear. A lot of it has to do with fear of rejection, that anxiety, that fact that our brains, and Jeb talked about this at Outbound, right? He talked about the whole physiology behind rejection, and how our brains are literally wired to not have us get rejected so that we don't get thrown out of the tribe. And This goes back thousands and thousands of years. And so we're all programmed to kind of do what it takes to stay in to have people like us and to stay in the tribe. And of course, here we are fighting this brain that's been trained all of these years. So it takes a lot of deprogramming really to kind of get yourself around those things. And it's you can't think your way out of it, right? It comes down to taking action.
So that's really interesting. So you said programming. Our brain is programmed, but what I'm really into lately is the ability that we have to reprogram our brain, right? And so you're saying top performers get excited about a no, and they must have done some. Maybe they're born with it, but most likely they've reprogrammed their brain to get excited to say, hey, I know that if I ask 10 people for an appointment or for an order, one's going to say yes. That's the averages. So if they get a no, maybe they're like, awesome, only 8 more to go until my yes, right? I mean, is the type of reprogramming going on?
That is exactly the type of reprogramming. It is it's knowing that it's a numbers game and making that numbers game work for you. And to the extent that you can be a smart marketer and a smart salesperson, you should, by all means. For example, I'll never forget a time that Richard and I were doing a webinar, and somebody said, I'm pitching people. I think this guy was at a gas station, and he was just like pitching strangers all day long. And he's like, nobody's telling me yes. And it's like, well, you've got to make sure that your methodology is is sound. You're probably not talking to good qualified prospects, right? You also are losing these people as soon as they drive away. You don't have their contact information. You can't follow up. So it's really a bad strategy. So you want to do as many things as you can to put yourself in the right place, in front of the right person, and that will influence those numbers. But yeah, it's still a numbers game. And it's still, even though we like to say people aren't numbers, but it's still a situation where it does require a lot of persistence. And people do make changes in their lives. We know this. They change vendors, they change suppliers, they decide to do something, and we are on their timeline. They're not on ours. And so it's up to us to be the pursuers, even though I know people don't like to chase and you don't want to be perceived that way. But you've got to be, in the words of Outbound, you got to get out there and you have to do the hunting and the pursuing.
Yep. And you know, my previous business was a magazine for high school students. And at any given time, we had 5 or 6 salespeople selling ads in the magazine. And I would always tell them, I would say, give me 2 years of you just busting your butt, calling. And I use the whole 9 out of 10 people are going to say no, get excited about the one that's going to say yes. I would try to help them reprogram. And inevitably, if they would give me 2 hard years, they would be the most successful people, right? They would make 6 figures. They would have the top accounts. And I think it's important for salespeople, especially starting out, that, you know, your business, my business, those first couple of years, we're getting a lot of no's, but we're also building our client base, right? So it's like we're getting the plane off the ground. I think Tony Robbins uses the analogy that we use like 60 or 70% of the fuel, you know, getting off the ground. And then when we're in the air, we're still using fuel, but a lot less, right? And that's true for salespeople. Like, you're going to get a lot more no's in the beginning, but I'm imagining, you know, for you and your husband, Andrea, that you busted your butt for the first few years, but now I'm sure you're still doing sales calls, et cetera. But at the same time, your reputation, the referrals, you've got the flywheel turning, that, you know, you're not having to hear no as much because you're getting calls, right? Inbound calls.
Yeah, that is exactly what happens. And you absolutely have to hustle harder in the beginning for sure. And of course, you're also learning and you're refining and you're figuring out what does and doesn't work, especially when it comes to, you know, how do you want to phrase this scripting wise, and just to get someone on the phone, what's some of the best language that you can use, whether you're leaving a message on a cold call or whatever. You just have to learn. You have to go through that to learn. And so there's a lot more failing and a lot more no's in the beginning. It's probably why, you know, you look at people in every business and industry, and it's, you know, there's a reason why there's like the top people, and it's not very crowded, because it takes a tremendous amount of work and a tremendous amount of stick-to-itiveness to get up there and to work through all of those dips. Right? I mean, there's so many of them. So absolutely, you learn more and you get better experience, and then you don't hear no as often. And then really at that point, what happens is you just start going after bigger no's. If you're smart, you just start putting yourself in positions where bigger things are on the line. Things get even harder. So it's not necessarily that you're just kicking back and relaxing. Things just get even more challenging.
I love that. That could be your next book. Go after bigger no's, right?
Big no's.
That's true, right? So maybe you're used to getting $500,000 orders. Now you want $5 million orders, right?
Exactly. And, you know, we, in the book Go for No, we've got something that we call the 5 failure levels. And the 5 failure levels are, and this is not something I talked about at Outbound, but it's 1, the ability to fail. 2, it's the willingness to fail, which is kind of where we all, you know, we try to get people, like in a 1-hour speech, I try to convince people, hey, you got to be willing to fail. Level 3 is the wantingness to fail, though. It's that wantingness. It's that going to bed at night going, oh my gosh, I didn't hear no today. Not one person told me no. I am not out there. I'm not making my offers. I'm not having conversations, right? That wantingness is so key. And then level 4 is that failing bigger and failing faster and failing big, going after those big no's. And that is that not making assumptions about what somebody's going to do and being willing to risk. And level 5 is failing exponentially. That's team failure. So that's having that group of 5 or 6 salespeople going, all of you get out there and start hearing no more often.
Right. That's a great idea. Going to bed and saying, how many no's did I hear today? Maybe you want to keep a little notebook. And if you didn't hear any no's, it means, you were out there, you were not out there trying, right?
Absolutely. And we are typically, this is what we've all been taught and trained just in terms of goal setting. It's all about yes goals and what we did. And all salespeople are very good at knowing what their yeses were. They know exactly what their yeses were. They know when they got them and where they got them, but we don't know as much about the no's, and paying attention to that and saying, wow, I'm not hearing those no's. Why? Am I not making enough calls? Or maybe I'm just leaving a bunch of stuff on the table. Maybe I'm not in a given interaction or given opportunity. The person never said no to me.
You just made me think about when I was in college, right? So we had our bar, right? Our bar that we would go to, Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. And a friend of mine, Mike, and I'll leave it at that. He wasn't particularly good looking, we'll say. He wasn't ugly. He was somewhere in between, he wasn't getting a lot of double takes. I'll put it that way, right? But this sounds terrible, I guess, but he would always find a girl throughout the evening that was interested in him, right? And I'm like, how are you doing this, Mike? Your personality isn't that great. You're not winning any good looks awards. And he goes, I have a formula. I go, what's your formula? He goes, I just ask out every girl in the bar until somebody is interested. And I was like, what a great strategy. I mean, he was going for no, right? He maybe got 20 no's and 21 said, yeah, I'll talk to you, Mike,
It is. I have to tell you something. This is so weird because right before I got on this webinar with you, I was on Twitter and I noticed that somebody recommended our book to somebody else. And I was kind of looking to see what this conversation was about. And it was for guys in terms of building their confidence and dating and all of that. Absolutely. And I think it's Colleen Francis. She loves to say there's a fine line between persistence and stalking. And of course there is.
Yeah.
Right? Of course there is. But most of us
know when to walk away, right?
know when to walk away, yeah. But most of us don't reach that line. Most of us hang back, wait, we play it so safe and we don't hear no from anyone. And that's so that's where we're trying to get people, is just to get to that line and then to make sure that, hey, if you cross it, you pull back immediately. Yep.
So you're reminding me. So Grant Cardone was on my podcast a couple of months ago, and he has talked about in the past how when he was interested in his now wife, but she wanted nothing to do with him. And he talks about, I think he spent a whole year of full of no's. Yeah. And he probably was walking that line that we just talked about pretty closely. Right. But
if it's Grant Cardone, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And, but he found out some of her interests and, ended up saying, hey, do you want to do this together? And she's like, I'll give it a shot. And the rest is history. But I guess the one of the kings of taking no for an answer. Right.
Right. Yes.
So I want to talk about your program. So you have your book, you have your website, you do a lot of speaking. If there are Avanti family people that want to engage with you, learn more about you, what's the best way to start that?
I say come to goforno.com, which is our website, exactly how it sounds, goforno.com.
Pretty easy, right?
Yeah. And, we wrote the book a long time ago, Dave. And so the book kind of has a life of its own. And then a couple of years ago, we decided to create an online course. So we got our material online. We were had CDs and DVDs and those type of products forever. And then it's like, okay, this online course thing is so great because you can learn when you want, where you want, and just plug into the platform. So I'm really excited about that as well.
That's awesome. In your book, you get your book on Amazon. Mm-hmm. And for those of you watching, I'm going to hold up another book that Andrea showed us during her presentation. And it's an incredible example of not settling for no. And of course it's by a child, right? And they're the best salespeople in the world, right? I mean, I have 3 kids. One of them is 8 and man, he gets his way. He gets his way, right? I mean, he's the third kid by now too, so of course I'm worn down.
You're worn down.
But when they're 3 and 4, and, Daddy, can I do this? Daddy, can I do this? No. I'm like, oh my God, all right, just do it quick. Leave me alone, right? And I mean, they're the best, right? So I want to give this this little girl credit, right? Her name is Hadley Glist. Did I say that right?
Yep.
And how did you come across her book, by the way? I forgot.
So, very good friend of ours.
Okay.
Hadley's dad. Yeah.
All right.
And he said you got to see Hadley's book because it's exactly what you guys talk about with Go for No.
So I'm holding. So you made it into like a little mini book, and I'm actually using it as a bookmark in the book that I'm currently reading. So that's why I have it handy.
Yeah.
But I want to read this book, and it's 3 pages. So Hadley wrote this book, and how old is she when she wrote it?
I think she was 5 or 6 at the time.
So perfect. Yeah. So this book, and it's really cute. If you're watching this, go to YouTube, you can see it. She's got some great little pictures. It's, I think it's her and her daddy and a cookie, right? So one day I asked my daddy for a cookie by Hadley, illustrations by Hadley. And they're great illustrations. There you go, everybody. I love them. One day I asked my daddy for a cookie, but my daddy didn't let me have a cookie. So I asked for a cookie, but he didn't let me have a cookie. So I asked for a cookie, but he didn't let me have a cookie. So I asked for a cookie. He let me have a cookie. The end. What a great story, right? And you were like, all right, this is Go for No on steroids, right?
Right. And it is. And the great thing about kids, and this is what we tell people, you've got to be creative, right? Kids, they don't think on the first ask, oh man, I'm not getting a cookie today. It's like, oh, I see. I'm going to have to work a little bit harder, be a little more creative than mom and dad, maybe ask someone different. Maybe if dad is really set in his ways here, I'm going to go ask mom and I'll ask her in a different way. They switch up my strategy. I mean, they get very good. They get very clever. And we really need to get that natural sense of tenacity back.
Yeah, absolutely. So if somebody is like, all right, I'm into it and I want to do it. How can somebody, start implementing these practices like right now? They're going to pick up the phone right after this podcast and start going for no.
Yeah, I love that question. Well, first of all, I would say create a no awareness, like figure out, and one of the things I suggest people do is to kind of create a baseline, figure out where you are in your counting and paying attention to no's. So go for maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, and just look at how many no's are you getting in your business? How many conversations are you having? How many yeses? How many maybe just no responses, things that kind of get pushed, and then how many no's you're getting. And then start setting a no goal. And this is to set a goal for the number of no's that you're going to hear in a given week is probably perfect. And go out there, start having your conversations, do your tracking, and pay attention and see, instead of just focusing on your yes goal. So maybe if you have a goal to get 2 appointments this week, say, I'm going to try to get 10 or 20 no's. Or if you know that those 2 appointments take 20 conversations, try to get 30 no's and try to go out there and hit that no goal. Put the yes goal aside of 2. Don't worry about it and see what happens. And oftentimes the yeses double or triple, and you don't even expect it because what you're focused on is your activity. You're not focused on that end result of just getting those 2 appointments.
That's fantastic. And I think the combo of setting aside the time to make sales calls and then, like you said, almost making like a tickler list of how many no's that I get today. And probably in about 3 weeks, you're all of a sudden going to see like, wow, I'm getting a lot more appointments, a lot more sales. Right. Mm-hmm. And I know what Anthony, so his last name, Iannarino.
Yeah. I say it like 9 different ways too.
Well, he's actually going to be on my podcast tomorrow, so I better get it right. But he was like, listen, all your sales. Iannarino, right? Yeah. That's good. Yeah, I should, being Italian, I should say it well, but that's a doozy. So he said all your sales problems will be solved, whether you're good or bad, if you just spend 6 hours a day, making sales calls. 6 hours a day, is anybody really going to do that? I don't know that stuff. I think, geez, if you could just spend like 90 minutes every day making outbound calls, that your flywheel will start turning, and add you with tracking no's, because that means you are asking, right?
Right. Well, so here's one of the things I say, and this is obviously a simplistic way to look at it, but I say, what would happen to your business if, and I try to do this myself, and it can be hard because sometimes you can't get the answer, because we deal with, in today's market, depending on what you're selling, so many conversations, so many things that are not resolved, right? You don't have an answer today. But what would happen if you were able to get to one no every day? You got one no every single day, right? And so for that appointment, for even that referral, whatever, you just, by 5 o'clock on every work day, somebody's going to tell you no to something because you asked. You asked for the meeting, the appointment, you called somebody and said, hey, did you make a decision yet? Right? You're pushing, you're moving the ball down the field. And just that little bit of activity would, I think, create amazing change in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in your, I have all your information here, and it's one of the things you put as a bullet point is that when you were 8 years old, you called George Lucas?
Right. I told that story at Outbound.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
Well, my absolute dream of dreams was to be a movie producer. Director, and I wanted to work with George Lucas because I watch Star Wars all the time. It's my favorite movie. I've seen it like hundreds of times. And so a family friend happened to have his office number. It was very weird, like just kind of, and gave it to me because I'm sure he thought, yeah, right, she's not going to call him. I don't have to worry about it.
Right, she's 8.
Yeah, she's 8. And I did call and I got his secretary, and she of course I wasn't skilled at handling gatekeepers at the age of 8. So she talked me into signing up for his fan club, which I did. And that was really the end of it. And I ended up throwing a complete and total hysterical fit, having not gotten through. And because in my head, in my 8-year-old head, of course, George Lucas would want to work with me, and he's going to see my brilliance and fly me up to, Northern California, and I'm going to be on his team. It'll be great. So I apparently threw this huge fit. And the point of the story, although there's a few different lessons, one of which I like telling people, hey, go for big no's. That was a big no.
It was a big no.
It was a big no. The other problem, though, of course, I was not persistent. And I really did at that age kind of like, even though I was still fairly young, I was like, I did let that no stop me and didn't pursue that. Although I ended up making a Go for No movie myself years later. A documentary.
Oh, okay. How can we see that movie?
So that is available on goforno.com as well.
Oh, so we can watch the movie.
I'm actually in the process of getting it so that it can be streamed, because we actually made it a few years ago.
Awesome.
But, So finally got that. Did a little bit of that dream. Of course, I'm not working with George Lucas.
Are you in the movie?
I am not in the movie. So it was one of these, we call it The Secret on a Budget. It's like on a serious budget, talking to people about failure, rejection, and hearing no. And we interviewed a bunch of people.
How long is it?
98 minutes.
Okay. All right. Very cool.
We interviewed 58 people. We drove all around the country. We talked to Jack Canfield and met him in his house in Santa Barbara. I mean, it was really cool. Yeah. We met some really cool people. Ended up meeting in Maine, of all places, 2 missionaries who were walking on the side of the road. And I don't know how we stumbled upon them, but these guys get rejected all the time. And so we interviewed them, and we were just interviewing people about rejection all over the place. It was really fun.
Very cool. From Santa Barbara to Maine, rejection and no's all over the place, right?
Everywhere in between. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. That's gotta be the hardest thing, is knocking on people's doors to change their religion, right? I mean, that's.
Oh my God. You said it. Yes.
Selling popcorn's one thing. Changing your religion, I'm not sure.
So magazine subscription,
yeah. That's a tough one.
It is. But these guys. I mean, it's first of all, like, what do they have? Like, how are they even able to do that? And it really is 2 things. It's being on a mission and having that belief.
Yeah.
And so it just powers them through, and they're so into it. And there's something that you have to respect about that, because there's not too many things in this world that most of us would be willing to go through to do that. And we actually, Richard and I talk about this all the time. Like, if we needed to raise all of a sudden $500,000 for one of us to have some life-saving surgery, like, what doors would we knock on? Who would we call? Like, and just and say, like, listen, you need to do this. And it's interesting how when you have a mission and when you have that motivation, how rejection, you just throw it out the window.
Yeah.
So it is possible for us.
You would find that $500,000, right?
Right. You would.
Maybe it's 5,000 here, 5,000 there. You're calling me, you're calling Gittimore, you're calling Anthony Iannarino.
Right. Exactly.
You're going to get it, right?
I'm calling Jeb at Sales Gravy.
Jeb can write one check. You're all set, right? So I love it. So last question, I always love this question because at the end of the day, you are a business owner. You are an entrepreneur, you and your husband. And it seems like you're doing well. But whenever I ask people to peek behind the curtain about I'll call it a crashed and almost burned type of story. Do you have one of those for us?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Which one should I pick?
I know people say, I love that. Like, which one, right?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you just what happened with Go for No even, because as the people who profess like to be persistent and to never give up and stuff, when we first wrote that book, we bootstrapped it. We designed the cover ourselves. It was absolutely horrible. And, but we were proud of the content. The book itself looked pretty bad, but we still thought, don't worry about it. So, we sent out 500 direct mail, got the names and addresses of like the top VP of sales and all of the top companies, sent out 500 copies with a letter that was like, this book can change your sales team, order a fax back order form, order copies for your sales team. This is going to be amazing. So we're waiting for the orders to roll in and it's like crickets, nothing happens. And we're like, oh my God, maybe somebody at the post office, like they just threw them in the trash. They didn't even make it. Sadly, no, because we got one order, which
that was wishful thinking, right? Like, oh, there's a mistake. No, there's not.
We did get one order for 50 copies, bulk order. So we knew we had something, but it was still a pretty big failure. And we struggled with that book for about 4 or 5 years. And we were just so tired of beating our heads against the wall. And at one point we went to a sales conference and we met this guy named Tom, and I knew he was in sales, and I gave him a copy of Go for No. And he called us a couple days later and he's like, guys, are you open to feedback? And we said, yeah. And he said, you've written one of the greatest sales books of all time, but you have the worst cover in the history of publishing. Nah. So we said, okay, all right. And he's like, if you will change the cover, I'll give 5,000 copies. And we were like, yes, we will change the cover. So we changed the cover to what it is today. And Tom bought his copies, and that gave us a little bit more belief in the book and what we were doing. But I mean, we were so despondent.
Here is, I printed out what you sent me.
Oh,
we're going to get a bonus of your picture too.
Nice.
But here's the current cover, everybody.
Yeah.
So.
And that picture is how I should look today, except I was working out this morning.
Oh, there you go. There's how she looks, when she's ready to give a keynote.
Right. There's when the hair is good and the makeup's good.
You still look fantastic, Andrea. So don't worry. I want to see that first cover. You have that first cover available? Or have you burned it?
No, but it is online. Where is it?
Oh, is it? All right. Yeah. Well, maybe if you can.
I can actually describe it to you. So fundamentally, the worst color, and as a marketer, I mean, and somebody who knows, this, you don't put black text over dark red. So it was dark red with black text, and the text had like a shadow. So it looked like it had been like photocopied, but on red, it was just a muddy, and it was just kind of a mess. And
sounds hard to read. Sounds like
hard to read. It was hard to read, and it was not professional. And so the adage, don't judge a book by its cover, people do judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
And then, so fast forward, and I will keep this very quick, Dave, I promise. But in 2006, so the book started to sell a little bit, and then we got a call from Simon & Schuster. We got an agent, and he helped us get to a big publisher who I almost just said their name, big publisher. And they said, yeah, we'll publish your book. And so we were back and forth, and finally we were waiting for this offer that was going to change our lives, and we're standing by the fax machine and it doesn't come. And we called the agent and we're like, hey, the offer was supposed to be faxed over this morning. And he said, yeah, they just decided to pull the plug at the last minute. You guys don't have a big enough platform. And they decided that your book's never going to sell 5,000 copies. So we decided, okay, we're going to prove them wrong. So that was another heartbreaking moment around the book. So this book has had a lot of success, but a lot of failure.
Well, it's very appropriate that it got a lot of no.
It did get a lot of no.
A lot of no, but you kept on going for it. So, and I imagine you've sold 5,000 copies.
We have.
Yeah. And did you write a nice little letter to that publisher? Be like, hey,
We try not to mention them. We just always say, think of the biggest publisher you can think of. And
right. Interesting. No, it's interesting. There was a guy when I was starting my magazine for high school students. The whole idea was to help them with college and career and life planning. And he said, they're not interested in learning about that themselves. It's never going to make it. I don't know how you're going to do it. I'm like a 25-year-old kid. I'm like, you're not supposed to say that to a 25-year-old kid. It's about to be an entrepreneur. So I said, you know what I'm going to do is there's a Sicilian phrase that, it basically says revenge is served best on a cold plate, right? So basically like smiling, saying, here you go. I did it, right? So I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to say his name, but I said, would you mind if I add you to the subscription list? And he goes, oh, absolutely. Because in my mind, I'm like, he's going to watch this thing grow, And it went from Rochester, New York to Buffalo, Syracuse to all New York State to the point where we franchised it in every state in the country. And we had distribution in almost 30,000 high schools 5 times a year. And we were reaching 3 million high school students, right? And he watched that grow, and it was like my little sweet satisfaction. I put him on the mailing list,
No, yeah, that's awesome.
I wasn't mean about it. I wasn't like,
right.
In his face,
Right.
Never talked to him again about it. But he saw it grow, and in my mind, I was like, he's saying, wow, I was wrong, Dave. So I am very glad that I met you. Your keynote was great. If you ever have the chance, Avanti family, to go see Andrea speak. She's phenomenal. I love your talk, and I love what you're doing, and I love the twist in the message. It's very counterintuitive, which I think is fantastic.
Thank you so much. Well, I appreciate you bringing me into the Avanti family.
Absolutely. And we have conferences as well, right? So we've been doing them in Rochester because it's my hometown. And we're gonna have one more here in Rochester in October 16th through the 18th. 3 days, about 10 speakers. And by the time I met you, we already had our speakers set. Sure. But next year in 2020, we're going to go big time. We're going to do maybe in Atlanta, maybe a Charlotte, North Carolina, maybe a Orlando, something. We're going to go big time, right? And so I'm going to be in touch with you because I would love to have you be a speaker at that conference.
I am in, and I'm in Orlando. So if you end up here,
yeah. Oh, that's right. I knew you were in Florida. I forgot that you were specifically in Orlando.
I can get myself to Charlotte as well. So
excellent. Well, I'm leaning towards Atlanta because of course Disney, and I bring the kids, and so I think that's why it's so great to have a conference in Orlando because so much fun stuff to do, right?
It is, and it's an easy. So many hotels. It's an easy place to put on an event for sure. Yeah, very good. So Andrew, before we go, once again, if people want to contact you, learn more about you, get in touch with you, what's the best way? GoForNo.com, best way. GoForNo.com. It's so easy, right? That's brilliant. It doesn't, yes. I don't even care. People don't even need to know my name. It's just Go For No. Go For No. Yeah. And then you're big on social media. What we're going to do, everybody, at AvantiEntrepreneur.com is we'll have all the show notes. So go there, AvantiEntrepreneur.com. We're going to have a recording of this that will stay there forever. Over 120, maybe 130 now episodes of doing this for almost 3 years, folks. We have a lot of other great resources at AvantiEntrepreneur.com. Would love to see you there. Andrea, thanks again. I wish you continued massive success. Dave, thank you so much for having me. It was great meeting you. Yep, you too. And thank you, everybody, again. And make sure to have a great day and stay awesome.
Thank you for listening. Head over to AvantiEntrepreneurGroup.com for show notes and more helpful advice from entrepreneurs like you. Continue to find your entrepreneurial rhythm at the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast.